Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing? Hey, Shri.
Hey, Peter, good morning. It's 3 minutes over the top of the hour, so I guess we can get started. So real quick, this week we have a couple of quick agenda items to speak about. And let me go ahead and I've already shared my screen, and I'm assuming everyone can see that. So a couple of quick updates on the last week, what was committed. One was the notification rules. There was an ask from a few partners that when we go to the integrations tab and choose an integration right there, the requirement was we should be able to define notification rules. So that's something that we have incorporated, and it's will be pushed to live in some time. If you're aware right now, the way to do it is to go to the notification rules on the bottom left menu item and then do it from there. But you don't have to do that anymore, because right when you define an integration, right there, you can define the rules of when something should become a trigger for a notification. So that's something that's been an ask from a few partners, and I'm happy to share that it's made it to this week's the last week's sprint, and we have it ready. It will be pushed out. If it's not already pushed out, it'll already be pushed out to all your instances. So that's one quick update that I would like to share with everyone here. A second requirement was from a few partners who are using the on-premises version, and there were some minor inconsistencies a few times where the SaaS instances were automatically getting updated to the latest and greatest versions, but the on-premises were running a little behind schedule. So that issue has also been fixed. So now any change that happens will get pushed to both, be it if you're a person using the cloud version, the SaaS version, or the on-premises version. Both of them will get updated at the same time in sync, so that there is no loss of functionality for people who are on the on-premises version. So that's also something that's been fixed by the team, and I'm happy to share that even that will be pushed out if it's not already pushed out. I believe it's scheduled in a little while from now after this call. The last piece, and pretty much the main agenda for today's update, and Shiva had spoken about it last week on the PII scanning feature, which has been a big ask from many people. So again, we have early screenshots that I'll share. Just want to make sure that it is a complex a module in its own way, and most likely we'll be introducing it as a separately priced module, and the exact pricing is something we have some broad indicators, but we'll share that over the course of this discussion. So essentially what we're doing with the PII feature set is it's a lot of stuff, right now. The core engine is what the team is working on with a few of the screens that I have right now today. But there is a lot of work, as you might imagine. There is it has to show up something that can be scheduled, so that you can schedule a PII only scan. If you want to, you should be able to see the job status of a PII scan. So there are a lot of moving parts behind getting PII to work besides the core technology itself. So as we speak, those things are getting done. But the progress is pretty fast. As you can see, in just one time, we have already added a new scan profile. So if you see on screen now, you'll see that we have the new scan profile where you can add a new profile and say the type is of a PIS scan. So this is pretty similar to what you have seen in the past when you say you want to do only an active directory scan, or only a full scan, or only an asset discovery scan. So similar to that, you'll see a new menu item pop up called PII scan. And that's what you're seeing on screen right now, which will be that you can add a new PII scan. And when you click on the action right there, you can choose, you can give the scan a name, what is the type of scan, and then you can say what are the, either you select all, or you say what do you want to the tool to scan, like first name and last names, addresses, telephone numbers, date of births, passport numbers, fingerprint, driver's license number, email, and so on. So you can choose only a few, or you can select all, and it will choose pretty much everything there. So that's on the scan profile. And you can go further to say, what is the scan settings? What are the path settings? What are the paths that you would like this to scan? So you can enter the path. You can add multiple paths, the plus button there. You can add multiple paths there, and it'll save that. And likewise, if you'd like to exclude any subfolder within that, you can say exclude this. Like, for example, if it's inside a Windows system directory, you don't want that to be scanned. So those things can be excluded right there. And also equally importantly is if there are any file servers to be shared. So here is where you would enter any SMB shares that are there, which is could be a big place to scan for PI information, because that's usually like a shared folder, a shared drive on the network, which may have data with all the employees in the company there. And you want the scan to kick in and search that particular SMB file path. So you can add that here location. Likewise, you can include and exclude locations there. So that's on the path settings. And the next piece is on the file shares. What are the locations there? What, again, they include and exclude locations there. And if it's a Linux server and it's not an SMB share, it's a Linux server, you can enter the Linux server path name there. And likewise, again, they include and exclude within that path. So that's what is being worked on right now by the team. And again, you can select finally which are the companies to be included as part of this particular scan profile. So you can say only scan, particular company, exclude certain companies based on your contract with various companies. You can choose which company to scan and which to exclude. So that becomes pretty easy when you do that. And it'll only select those particular companies right there. And once you do all this, you can hit on save, and that becomes a scan profile that is there. And it'll, in the next version, when we show that, we'll also have the ability to schedule it. Right now, the schedule part is missing, but that's something the team is working on since we have just been working on for the last like about a week or so. That's a progress so far. And what you see here is a PIS scan result, which says what's the name of the file, what's the location that was discovered in, what's the origin of the server, the source, is it a file server or is it a desktop? You'll see that. When was it scanned, and what's the policy that was violated? So it'll tell you that, if you have a specific scan profile policy, it'll tell you this was what was violated and this was not, and what's the risk score. So we'll also have eventually hyperlinks to all this so that what the risk score actually means. Like today we use a CVSS scoring for classifying vulnerabilities on and an overall risk of a particular asset. Likewise, what do these risk scores mean is something that we'll also include both in the documentation, as well as right here we'll have when you hover over it, you'll also get details about what is the particular risk and how is it calculated. So that's what is the progress. Like I said, just been a week, but it's my belief the team has worked pretty hard. As you can see, quite a lot of stuff is already there and working in our labs. And this is how it will look like. Having said that, obviously there is a lot of additional things to still work on. Pending is the PII reports. We need to work on getting you reports so that when you go to the standard reports section, so like today you see, remediation plan reports, you see vulnerability reports, asset reports, and active directory reports, and so on. You'll also see the PI reports showing up there. And we also need to include a couple of dashboards specific to PIIs. So right in the main dashboard page, when you log in, on that page, one of the drop-downs will be the PII dashboard, and that's something that will be there. Likewise, the monetary analysis, which is the absolute value at risk, which says that, this is the kind of data that's found, and potentially that's going to be the value attached to that data. So there is a guesstimate number that's being worked on. There are standard algorithms for all these. So that's something that is also being added. After we finish these 3-4 items, we'll also start searching the dark web, so that if any of these PI data is seen in the dark web, that's something that will something that people will start that's something that you can start searching on in the dark web, and that will be a separate dark web report that we'll also pull out in addition to the standard internal scan, internal desktops, laptops, file servers. In addition to doing those scans, we'll also start scanning the dark web there. Then obviously there's a database UI that has to be put in place, and a backend. So those things are also something that the team is working on. So hopefully, like I said, Shiva's expectation is that that would be ready by the 4th of February. And as there's a couple of days holidays here in the Bangalore Development Center. So tomorrow, day after, it's a holiday here because it's our annual Republic Day over here. So that's something that is a 2-day off, but the rest of the team will be working, and we will make sure that on the 4th, we'll have we'll request some of you to nominate yourselves if you'd like to be part of the beta. And then we will roll it out for you either in your own internal network or with a sample customer that you may wish to nominate. We can do the scan with them to make sure that we get some early feedback. If there is anything that is not working quite as well as we would expect, then we can fix those bugs and get you a stronger release towards the end of next month. So that's basically what is the features that is built so far on the PI scan module. Any questions anybody has so far on what we discussed, happy to take that up. I believe there are a few messages on chat, but let me check that right now. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Steve, there is a question which said, can you please review the notification rule changes? Yes, the notification rules right now, you have to, after you set up an integration, for which you would go into the global settings, choose the integrations tab, and there you would add a new integration, say, for example, ConnectWise, and you'd add integration right there. And you'd save that integration, and that would just be the integration piece there. And when you want to set up notification rules, you'd come back to the main screen, and then on the bottom left, there is a I believe the second or third last link there which says notification rules, and then you would go ahead and add notification rules and choose which is the integration for that particular notification. What we have made it right now is made it simpler, where you can do it in one shot. When you set up the integrations in the integrations tab, right there you can set up the notification rules. So that's basically the big change that we've introduced, as opposed to having to do the integrations there and come back to the main screen to do the notification piece. You can do it in the same, when you're setting up the integration, right there you can set up the notifications for that particular integration. So that's basically what we have done there. I hope that's clear. Feel free to come online if you need more clarifications on that particular one. All right, Dennis, there is a question planned to add a custom pattern using regex. I believe Shiva's already answered that. Yes, we will have the ability to put a regular expression so that if you want to scan for certain patterns, those patterns can be put as a regex, and you can search for that. So yeah, happy to share that that's possible. All right, Steve has another question. Since we are well on the way to scanning for PII, is there a possibility that we will be able to add specific terms to look for besides PII? For instance, for CUI scanning, looking for certain keywords in PDFs, Word, Excel keywords, and so on. So that's something that I need to, Swami, would you know the answer to that one? That can we also search for, I would imagine that since we're already allowing custom search using regex, that would kind of follow the same bucket, but perhaps, Swami, can you just chime in and see whether on Steve's second question there, is that something that you know better than I do?
Yes, sir. We can able to add that custom keywords, like in the scan settings, we can allow them to add the custom settings.
Thank you, sir. All right. So, yeah, so I think most we are caught up on questions, and Shiva has also put in a quick video there, a link to the video which shows the notification changes on that video. So it's a YouTube link. So please visit that, and that should certainly help give more clarity. So that is like a quick set of changes for this week. Yeah, so open to any other questions that folks may have. Happy to take that up between Peter and I. We can address those questions.
Hey, Sri, we got one more question from Dennis here asking about the ability to do bulk deletion of tags. Dennis, if you want to unmute yourself and hop on to, kind of go into it in a little more detail, feel free.
Okay, great. Yes, hopefully my dog will not be barking too much in the background. Yeah, actually the feature's been added. I got an email this morning. I tested it out. It's working. It's actually, I think it's very useful to be able to go in and manage those tags. If you're going to manage reports to views by tags, the ability to remove them other than one at a time has been something I've been asking for a long time, and looks like it's working quite well.
All right, thank you. And Chris, is there a scheduled regular PI scan to continuously check? Yes, like I said, there is a lot of work. What you're seeing right now on the few screens is the initial screenshots, and we just wanted to keep everybody posted of that how fast the team is working on getting this feature out. So yes, there will be certainly an ability to schedule this, so you can choose a schedule, and then that is something the team is working on. Likewise, the reporting is also something that you can schedule the PI reports like you do today with other reports. You can schedule that as well. So that'll get something that you can offer a service to alert your clients. So that's something that's certainly possible. Okay, Chris, your question is on reducing false positives. Is there anything specific that you have here? Can I request that you come on and quickly share that? Because in our case, actually the vulnerability databases are curated. We source vulnerability databases from multiples, right from Metasploit to the NVD to Vulners and many others, OEM sites and so on. And it's actually a human curated activity where there is a small team here who make sure that there is no duplicates, and they make sure that some of the vulnerabilities reported are actually vulnerabilities that have a risk score, exploitability score, and so on, before actually posting it as a vulnerability here. So we believe we are already doing that to reduce false positives compared to many of our competitors. But if there's anything specific that you have, can I request that you come on and we can take that up?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, so we're pivoting from Nessus. We had Nessus deployed for a handful of customers and ourselves internally for years, and we ran them side by side with Cyber CNS, and then like October of last year pivoted away and moved solely to using Cyber CNS, just because Nessus, when we're not using it in the Tenable.io type product, is not scalable across all the customers that we want to scan. But ultimately, we didn't see false positives really with Nessus. And just last week, I can give you 3 examples that we've opened with support. And I'll give a lot of kudos to support when we do identify them. They resolve them quickly, but we're definitely less efficient. So one example is for server 2022. One of our servers, or a handful of servers, were showing as being unpatched, even though they had the latest January cumulative update. It was because a patch that had been superseded by that cumulative update was still showing as being vulnerable, even though we couldn't patch it because it was rolled up into that cumulative update. So that was a false positive, but it was causing servers to show vulnerable on our reports, which we really need to avoid, right? We opened another ticket for .NET Framework about things like .NET 4 was being recommended to update to .NET 6. Version was being shown as vulnerable when it wasn't. It was not detecting certain versions that were out of support and should have been identified as needing to be upgraded. And then I know one of the concerns, this isn't necessarily a false positive, but a website, techspot.com, was being linked to for the recommended fix versus going to Microsoft's .net.microsoft.com download page. So it feels like, if we are recommending patches, that we should be going to the source and not a third-party site. And then the other one was Mozilla Firefox ESR was being reported as, or confused with, just the regular Mozilla Firefox product, and recommended to essentially, displace ESR with Firefox, which would not be correct, right?
That's correct.
For a deliberate reason. So that was just from last week. We had some Veeam false positive detections between the different versions of Veeam that are out there the week before. So I'm just curious if there's an awareness if other partners are experiencing this. And it just, ultimately we feel a bit less efficient. Nothing that's a showstopper, and we still love the product, but we'd love to see these false positives not show up on the reports.
So Chris, to answer that question, there are 3 things which essentially have caused this in the last couple of weeks. One is essentially we actually redid the entire vulnerability engine. So I think, got 95 to 97% there, but we still had a 3% error rate in terms of some of the legacy products that basically were brought into play. So that's where you saw some of the problems that you actually saw. Second, in terms of the issues with .NET and those versions, that basically was essentially, if you look at how we do those are essentially pulled from the MSRC, which basically is from Microsoft. And then we basically automatically pull those into the database because we believe that the MSRC source is correct. In this particular case, the MSRC had wrong information. And so again, we now have basically moved that into a manually curated set of items that we will essentially do. And so going forward, you should not see any of those problems, especially with .NET versions that are out there. On specifically the Veeam piece, we basically actually evaluated it, and what we found is that you had no vulnerabilities on the Veeam on the version that you actually had. So because this was brought to my notice too, so I actually evaluated that entire piece. So the answer is that yes, see, one of the things that happens with vulnerability management a lot of times, in fact, we have spent probably like more than 12 to 14 hours with various partners on various one-on-one calls, where we've shown them that, where people have shown us their Nessus report and said, you didn't find these vulnerabilities, and we've demonstrated to them that all of them were false positives over there. So we basically try to be as efficient as possible with the false positives, but there is basically a margin of error, which is right now around 3 to 5%, which is basically still existing in the database. We are actively working to bring that down into less than 1%. And the reports that you folks give us actually help us bring that error rate down. But we are also basically going to be tightening up the controls to essentially make sure that we have more human curation, because at the end of the day, what happens is, for example, I'll give you a simple example of what's happening right now, which is you have the manage engine vulnerability, right? So if you actually get into NVD and look at the versions of the products that are put in NVD, it basically says every version of NVD is basically every version is vulnerable, and then that will essentially lead to a false positive. What we've basically done is that we've then walked into the vendor site, which is basically Zoho Corporation. We've pulled out the NVD, this thing, and we've constructed our own NVD for this particular vulnerability and then put it back into the system. So we do this for most of the pieces, but yes, we do miss a few here and there, and we want to correct that, and we want to get this error rate to under less than 1%. So I agree with you, Craig. It's very frustrating when you see that there is a false positive, but please also consider the fact that we try to bring so many things together, and in that we have this at least 3% error rate that we have now. We earlier were at around 14% error. We're right now at 3%. We are committed to basically bringing this to less than 1% in the next 2 to 3 months. That's essentially our commitment.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep reporting them as we see them, and hopefully we see the volume on those drop.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Steve has a question related to monitoring files and folders for changes. Again, either Swami.
I can elaborate.
Yeah, please.
So there are programs out there. One of the things that NIST and CMMC want to see is a baseline. If you have certain folders that are sensitive, just to be able to track. Since we're already scanning, I don't know if this is even on the feature list or not, or whether it's I'm not necessarily asking for it. I'm just wondering if it's in the feature list, future feature list. So if you have a certain folder and you go in and say, take a snapshot, baseline snapshot of that folder, and then be able to just track the changes, log the changes going in and out of that, and just don't know if that's something that is being considered. It gets into network document classification. I'm not sure if you're going anywhere near that stuff. So
my question, Steve, is that would you be requiring what are the differences that happened, or just an audit log of this file was changed at this time by this person?
That's a open question. So I don't know if it's as with all the development in this, if it's even going to go that way. I think the group here would end up building something that's very
So because what Steve, we are essentially, we have the capability to file integrity monitoring, but we've just switched it off because it's not that I have this capability. It is, we use OS query, right? So OS query inbuilt has file integrity monitoring. So we can essentially give you the ability to switch it on a per company or per agent basis, and then you can define what files you want to basically monitor as sensitive content. But what we need to understand is that, so for example, there are two ways of presenting this information, right? One is basically saying that at this point of time, this file was basically modified by this person, and basically it changed from this size to this size. A second is to actually understand content. So when you get into content, that's when essentially, because it could be a Word document, it could be a PowerPoint, it could be a CAD file, it could be whatever it is, right? So how do you represent differences becomes a challenge. So the question is like, where do we want that? Because then I can introduce a feature which says protected files, and you can add all the protected files, and then it will give you an audit report of all those files.
I think initially the audit trail of just knowing that the trail of the files with the file name and who touched that file would be plenty. And ThreatLocker already does something similar, but I don't know if you were heading that way or if anybody's heading that. It's really just a question for a future. I don't think I'm qualified to decide the best way to do it. The rest of the team here, I'm sure, would have ideas if it's something we should do.
Actually, Dennis had asked for it before.
Okay.
So in fact, this was one of the features that came to me from Dennis. So we actually are on the path of basically putting this protected files feature in there.
Okay. All right, great. I'll just wait for you guys to develop that further. Thank you. I think the audit would work fine.
Okay.
Dennis?
Okay.
See there.
Yeah, I agree. The content monitoring, that's a pretty heavy lift. But just being able to show who accessed the file and made changes in certain sensitive folders probably would meet the CMMC requirements. It would be adequate at this point and much easier to implement.
Agreed. I thought so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. So yeah, we'll keep that in mind and see, before next week's call, we can share an update on, how easy and quickly can we introduce that as a separate report. So, we'll certainly get back to you on that particular feature.
Yeah, one of the things, this is Jason, one of the things that we have to be conscious of if we're going to do this is retention of that history and retention of that, the log data associated with this particular exercise. And, even with deduplication and compression, that can grow to get a little bit out of hand pretty quickly, but the minimum retention period, is a year. So just something to consider as these functionalities grow and are added to the platform is, what the retention periods are for, strictly, security related or things that are more compliance related, right? So as you move some of your components away from scanning and remediation and execution over to a compliance arena, meaning who did what, where, when, and how. You have longer retention period requirements if in fact you're going to try to do this to be in adherence to NIST 171A or, CMMC or whatever. Just a point of discussion, I guess.
I think that's a valid point that you got out, Jason, because that will have bearings on, how you store that data, how can you compare, the file integrity data between specific time periods and so on. So that's something that we'll look at, and hopefully before next week, we'll get an answer on, we'll do a small test in our labs to see how quickly the feasibility for that is. And then, we'll circulate that to the wider audience here. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the other questions. The UI changes, is it also for on-premise? Swami, do you want to comment to that? Adam has a question saying that does the UI changes that we spoke about, also for the on-premises version?
The UI changes, the new UI basically will be there for the on-premise version, but it is not happening immediately, as I said. So it's a 3-week to 6-week process that we're going through.
Okay.
And as far as the other features, the UI changes for the features are concerned, all of those changes have been pushed to all on-prem instances.
Okay. Few more questions related to people's reactions on the false positives. So that's something that we already discussed. Moving on, there is a question from comment from Paul on global reporting that was requested, I believe, last week. The use case was to compare cyber CNSs versus devices within our RMM system to find out which computers don't have our RMM agent installed. That's one. And the second question around, is there a process in place to manage scanning credentials in an efficient way, having an admin account in many different domains, password rotation, etc. Shiva, you want to take that up?
So 2 parts, right? One is essentially, I think, the baseline which everybody is talking about that could be used to basically figure out, because you can essentially figure out where the agents are installed and where it is not installed. We do have global reports, so we have global. So the only thing which, and we do have global reports on all the agents and basically the asset list on which the agents are installed. This is already there in your instances. So if you find anything which is missing over there, let us know. And then,
Shiva, on that one, one of the problems, and we can combine them after the fact, each global report generates one report. We can initiate it globally, but it generates a report at a site level. So we get 200 reports as opposed to a consolidated way to do it. We're trying to do it, and we're doing it somewhat on the back end to combine those Excel files on the back end to bring it into one data set, but being able to look essentially across all cyber CNS, what it discovers, whether it has credentials or not, and say, all right, I've got 7,000 Windows devices that I found, and in my RMM package, I've got 6,700. Here are the 300 Delta that don't have an RMM agent, but yet are a Windows device that's located on the network. And then having that as a thing for our admins to go track down and figure out where these things exist, what are the credentials for them, how do we get them managed.
So Paul, the way that I would suggest you would do it is that in the global dashboard, you have a view which says a list of all agents across all the companies. You can click download over there. You will get one CSV with the company name and the agent and the host name. So you actually don't even need to split across multiple sheets. With that CSV, you can do a VLOOKUP with your RMM data that you have, and you should essentially get this information out. I can get on a call and show you how we are doing it for a couple of partners. If you need any changes, I'm happy to make those changes.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'd look forward to that. And then the second question had to do more on the security side of things with the service accounts essentially that need login access and administrative level across, what are people doing in managing, rotating credentials, protecting that account at scale.
In fact, that's one of the things that I want to ask you. Are you guys using any password vaults, etc., that we should be integrating with directly so that this whole concept of rotation, etc., is taken care of? But again, we can take the top 3 or 5 of them that you're integrating with and then use those. But the only thing is that in that case, then the burden of storing the credentials is there with the vault, and we basically will connect to the vault. So the question is that would that be something that people are interested in? And second, do you have like such a strategy that is already in place in terms of a password vault?
Well, we implemented somewhat recently Tech ID Manager. Came across it, had never heard about it before, and it really solved a tremendous security hole, getting away from shared passwords, daily rotation of admin passwords for all of our tech. So basically it's a little service that runs on the domain controllers, and every one of our techs logs in. Instead of using shared passwords out of IT Glue or shared accounts, and that everybody has their own unique username, account, and passwords that get rotated automatically daily for those that they're grouped to. So you can, all right, here are 20 accounts that this team works on. Their accounts get associated with those and gets rotated, and you can create different groups and so forth across the customer base. And every day those accounts are MFA protected and complex long passwords that get rotated every day. And it's actually gone from, we're really hesitant about it. All of our engineers love it. It actually is much quicker, much easier to use than doing shared passwords out of something like an IT Glue, and gets to that one-to-one relationship that whether you pick the requirement, using shared accounts is just not a good thing. And so many people in the industry, it's been the only way to kind of effectively do it at scale. So, I'm saying that that's one product we use that it's been really effective, and it seems like it's really enhanced our security posture across all of our customers.
Hey, Paul, do you use?
So let me add to that. This is some, let me add to that. To those of you that don't, know me, I only operate in the security space as an MSSP, and we work with about a couple hundred MSPs at this point, a little over that. And Tech ID Manager is core in our stack. If you are struggling to manage the credentials for your downstream clients, and you're repeating passwords, or using Google Voice accounts to share MFA, MFA credentials, or TOTP or something like that, that solves a lot of those problems and is incredibly affordable as it relates to its capability. So I just wanted to add to that because it is kind of core to our recommended offering, and it solves as was just, whoever just spoke up gave a perfect example of its value proposition. So just an aside, outside of like a Bitwarden or a, LastPass or anything like that, this is a completely different way of dealing with it. And it's, it's gotten really good to the point where it can even, insert the password in a nested RDP session. So you're using a remote control tool to a machine, and then you launch an MSTSC session within that. It can identify the machine, and enter the password that's been rotated for that account within the last 24 hours. I don't work for them. I don't make any money from them. It's just to say, but it is a fundamentally good way to solve that problem. So I appreciate you letting me jump in. Whoever I overstepped, sorry about that.
Is that multi-tenant?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's designed specifically for MSPs. They're pretty clear too when you do your kind of onboarding that if you're an enterprise and you're kind of maybe massively large, but if you're a single enterprise, it's not the tool for you. But it's absolutely defined, created for the MSP community, and said it just absolutely kind of a dirty secret within our industry. It seems like it solves. So I guess it was Shiva I was talking to earlier, ultimate request, I'd love somehow to have there be a tie in between the account defined within Cyber CNS that is a local AD account and Tech ID managers that would have a daily rotation and protected in that way, and that the account we use, service account we use for scanning would be just like one of our other engineers, and it's protected in that same way. That would be pretty phenomenal.
We'll work on that, Paul, and we'll show you a initial version of how it would work, because I have to just check the APIs and availability of how I could basically integrate with it. But I'll come back to you with an answer early next week in terms of how we could do that integration.
Wonderful. All right, I'll wait for you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Paul. All right, so moving on, the next question is from Dennis, which says the browser extension discovery add-on is a good one, but will be more useful when there's a company report showing the browser extensions enabled across all endpoints for the company. Dennis, you want to kind of, if you could want to just hop on quickly and explain that?
Yeah, it would just be like any other report where you just pull up a report and here's a list of the endpoints and here are the browser extensions that have been enabled for each one. The data is already there. It's just that right now you have to go to each individual computer to look for that data, and having a report across the company would, I think, make it more useful.
Got it. So fine, I think this is something that we can take as a feature request, and we'll add it to our wish list. And since it's a simple report, I'm guessing we can knock that out pretty quickly, and we'll take it as an action item. Vishal, I'm going to request you to please keep that note, and then we'll circle back in a subsequent in a call to Dennis on that particular one.
Sure.
All right. Moving on, another question from Paul is, if there are workgroup PCs within a domain that are not joined with an Active Directory, and you have not entered admin credentials, will you be able to establish the baseline? I have not used this feature yet.
That was back and forth just with Chris had responded back, and I think I've got that answer. So I meant to direct it at Chris.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Tim has a question regarding Active Directory login failures for the past 30 days. Is there a way to add in a log source data, such as what workstation initiated this or which domain control it hit?
Yeah, we can add that information. So we'll basically pull that the event log corresponding to it and add the details from that. Not a problem.
Okay, so again, Vishali, request you to keep that in the wish list so that we can knock that out, and in a subsequent call communicate to the wider team here on that status there. Thank you. Okay. All right. Any other question? Yes, monitoring large folders. To Jason's point, yes, it will generate a lot of log data, and the retention of that is something that we have to, keep track of, so that we don't end up having too much data to manage. That's something that we will circle back next week when we do the feasibility for that particular feature on the file integrity monitoring. So we'll come back on that. Rhett, what about SFTP reports? I think we have the SFTP integration even now.
What they are saying is that the IP address, the source IP address, is changing continuously. So we in fact will be basically pushing everything out through the internet gateway, and I think this is already resolved. So the latest IP addresses that we've updated on the website will work for you. There will be no different IP addresses. Second is that can we basically integrate with something like Azure Files or a blob? The answer is yes. And we can integrate, we can provide that as an integration where if you basically provide us a Azure blob and basically the connection string, we can actually push data into the Azure storage for you.
Okay, so that's in place right now. We just need to provide that to you.
That basically is an integration that is right now in testing. So next week you can drop in your connection string and then you can get your reports out there.
Okay, Yeah, I think we just had the IP address. We were given that we were told that it was a static. It worked for about a month or two, and then we had the same issue just earlier this month. The IP address had changed. We were given a new one, so we were just trying to figure out the best way to go forward without having to
Yeah, this is
update
not,
the IP address every couple months.
yeah, this is no fix, but as I said, Azure storage also is basically coming in next week. So you can essentially send it to Azure storage too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Paul has a question. Is there a way to keep Office 365, Microsoft 365 Azure connections alive, or send warning that token is about to expire?
So we do keep the connections alive. The problem is that after, I think, approximately 3 months, Microsoft will essentially expire the token. So you can no longer refresh the token. So at which point it requests you to come in and authenticate it. It's an inbuilt security mechanism in Microsoft. So when that happens, you will essentially get an alert. And we are basically creating also in the new UI, you will actually get a dashboard saying that authentication with Azure is failing for all of these companies. So that will basically solve that particular problem.
Perfect. Thank you. So far, I think we are caught up on everything except one question from Leonard on Zyxel firewalls. If there is any support for adding integration for Zyxel.
I already answered. If we get access to one, then we can essentially add support for it. In fact, most of the firewalls we added support because partners gave us access to a sample device. If you can just give us one account with read-only access, we're happy to basically check that.
So Leonard, if my request is from the team is if you can provide remote access to your Zyxel firewall with a read-only login, we can schedule a time with you to access it. And then once the team understands the API piece, then we can commit to that integration feature.
Did want to remind everybody that there's been a big the nucleus integration was done last month, I believe, and they did an incredible job with that. And so, if any of you are using nucleus, as I understand, it's becoming quite popular in the channel. That integration is deep and done quite well. And so just an FYI for those. I know we mentioned it in the call before the end of the year, but I wanted to bring it up again.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. In fact, it's an action item on our end to include that icon and logo of Nucleus into our integration tab so that people who have it can light that up. And I also same thing with Blue Shift Cyber for the XDR, MDR, EDR piece. So that's something for the people running the SOC, and we have also built early support. Hopefully, over the next few days, we will launch that as a separate integration icon on the portal.
Yeah, like I said, the one that does your support and an MSSP that services only the channel. We sell quite a bit of the Blue Shift Source solution, and that integration and the relationship between the two organizations is the kind of interconnect that you want to happen and kind of hope that happens. And so that's we've requested a couple of integrations from you guys that weren't on anybody's radar, and it took some time and some planning. Obviously can't accommodate everybody, but I can't remember who did the work, but it was done incredibly well. It was exactly what we were looking for, and then some. So yeah, the Blue Shift part is great. Just want to thank you for that.
No, in fact, I want to thank you, Jason, because thanks to you, we got access to both the Blue Shift as well as um, nucleus. So both of them are thanks to your interactions with those companies. And like I said, hopefully over the next week or two, we will add those integration icons on the portal, so that right there from the application, you can click on that and integrate with those two products. So yeah, thanks for that. Okay, moving on, Jerry's query. Oh, I believe Shiva has already answered that. So right now we are all caught up. Any further questions, anyone? All right, so if there are no further questions, we still have about 6 minutes to the call. So we can give you back all the 6 minutes. And as always, thank you for making this product such a active community-led model. It's because of all your inputs that we are what we are today. And we always are extremely grateful for that. So thank you. Have a great rest of the day. And we'll be in touch next week with more updates for all of you. Thank you. Shiva,
Hope you feel better. Take care, everybody.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, bye.